Charlie Shields, Wells Fargo Advisors, LLC. My co-host tonight is Paul Mitchell, Vice President of First Cornerstone Bank. We're going to have an interesting guest tonight, Marisa Pell, who's an intuition business consultant. A little interesting twist to what we usually talk about. So stick with us. It's going to be a great show. Paul, how you doing?
Very good, Charlie. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I want to remind our viewers and listeners not to make any timing decisions. We're not attorneys. We don't give any advice except about the markets, and we don't want people to be market timing based on what they hear tonight. So having said that, I think a timely question is that we've been hearing from our Commander-in-Chief, our President, that things are fine because the stock market is up. Talk a little bit about if Main Street is doing okay.
Well, let me give you a classic example of Main Street. I had my hair cut a day or so ago, and I asked the person cutting my hair, so how do you think the economy is going? She paused. Her segment is not doing so great. So it's still spotty. It's still spotty. There's some aspects that seem to be strong, but there are plenty of others that are not, and a lot of people are not that happy about the way things are going.
Well, when I heard this being discussed, the thought that went through my mind is we were attempting to get our economy going after that crash in 2008. So we announced we were going to do shovel-ready programs, but then we decided to change our health care first. And they started heaping regulations on businesses. So this money was flooded out there, but businesses didn't want to spend it. So that money washed into stocks and bonds and drove interest rates low and the stock market high. And so I think there were some of the wrong reasons that caused the present high stock market and the present low interest rates. What's your thought on that?
That's an interesting, I guess, perception. I really wasn't aware of that, but I can certainly see some aspects of it. In the small business sector, and I think some of the larger companies also, there hasn't been that much growth per se, a little bit here and there. But I'll give you an example. I visited one of our customers, a printing company, a small business printing company, under $5 million in revenues. And of course, they were battered during the recession. I mean, because people just weren't, ordering, brochures or yearbooks or things like that. So what they ended up doing was they got together with another small printing company that they knew of, and now they're sharing one facility. So this company was paying, let's say, $5,000 a month for rent. They're still paying $5,000 a month for rent, but they're not paying an electric bill that's $3,500 a month. They're not paying the trash bill. Yeah. So the revenue is about the same. They're making a lot more money because of cuts. And a lot of the large companies, I think, have seen that also, that their revenues really haven't gone up. They're making more money because of all these dramatic cuts they made during the recession and have been somewhat reluctant to rehire.
And another example of that would be University City Science Center right here in Philadelphia. They have a receptionist for perhaps 4 businesses. They share the costs, and they can keep their costs down. There's a lot of entrepreneurial thinking that's going into survival for these small companies. But let's discuss that for a minute. It seems to me that in the past 3 or 4 years, the big international companies have had the advantage because the dollar was flat or going down or what have you. And so therefore we were able to export overseas. But now I think that worm is turning because the dollar is climbing, which is going to make it easier for other multinational companies that are away from the United States to sell their products to us cheaper. That will put pressure on these large cap stocks. So it seems to me that the medium-sized and small-sized companies are about to have an advantage. How do you see that?
I would think so. I think they're more able to be flexible to make some of these sort of unusual turns in their business. I'll give you another example of being nimble. I guess nimble is probably the good word for it. Yeah. Is we have a customer also that's a sign company. They make signs for like outside of stores. It could be a foot high, it could be 4 feet high that are lit up, that type of thing. Again, there was a business that was just terribly trashed by the recession because who's going to put up new stores or invest in new signs? Well, in the course of that, their major competitor actually went out of business. It was a competitor where the entrepreneur had learned the trade of his own business.
I see.
And what happened is that four of the employees from the old company that went under came to him and said, could you give us a job? And by the way, we have some business to bring you. So he has grown significantly because of that. He survived. And he doesn't want to get to be a big company because he can see the bigger you get, the more overhead you have, you can't be as nimble.
Sure.
It's an interesting perspective.
And we don't want to time the show because this is a show that's taped, so people shouldn't make business or investment decisions based on what they hear because it is taped. But these small-sized companies, it seems to me that the innovation is there, the willingness to work, but they're saddled with the extra costs of the Obamacare unless they only work 30 hours a week, and you know small business entrepreneurs are going to be working more than 30 hours a week.
Or other compliance issues.
Okay.
Obamacare is, I guess, the elephant in the room in terms of compliance now, more regulations. In banking, banks are terribly saddled with more compliance issues.
Oh, sure.
All small businesses are. They're filling out forms. They're hiring people to follow compliance regulations that, 2 years ago, they didn't need that employee.
Yeah, and
Now
the
they
big banks can hire much more easily a person that will fill out paperwork all day than the small bank does. It's only got
They
five
can
or
spread
six
they can spread
employees.
out over more assets, sure, more income.
Okay, sure.
I think compliance in general is a deterrent to the growth of small businesses.
Okay. Well, let's try to measure the economy. Are your clients making their payments these days, or are there still a high default rate? What's going on there with loans?
Well, by far and away, they're making their payments on time. We still have some that are struggling in some sectors. But this printing company that I visited, I congratulated them. They've had this loan for about 8 years, and I said, we don't have any one late payment, a record of not even one late payment. I said, well, we think we might have made one payment late, the invoice got lost or something. I said, well, we don't have a record of it. Congratulations.
Wow, that's good to hear. So do you think the future is going to be profitable and things are going to start to pick up from your vantage point for small businesses? Or are we still kind of grinding along, hoping things will improve later?
Well, there's definitely more optimism. I think it's going to pick up a bit. One of the difficulties, though, still for banks still is because of the low interest rate environment. It's tough for banks to make much money when they're charging their best customers 3.5%, 4%, 5%. I mean, in my 30-plus year career in banking, never seen such an environment.
Sure. Well, does that mean that loans are still hard to get because the bank is reluctant to take the risk when their reward isn't very large?
Well, it still can be difficult. You have to provide the right kind of information and all, but banks are very hungry and they're trying to do it because here's a bank that maybe has I'll say a small bank, might have $30 million of excess cash. They park it in the Federal Reserve overnight and they get 0.01% interest.
Yeah.
If they make a loan to anybody, even at 4%, see how much farther ahead they are?
Sure.
So there's a great incentive to make loans. But again, you have more compliance. The regulators are looking more closely at banks. Instead of doing things reading between the lines a little bit, you got to document, and then document some more.
Okay.
So that makes it difficult.
But the small business viewers and listeners out there can feel like if they come and see you, they got a pretty good shot at getting a loan.
Yes.
All right.
Banks are different. They all have their personalities. From the outside observer, they all look the same, like outsiders in most industries.
Yeah.
But if you don't have success with one bank, that doesn't mean you're not bankable. Move on. Ask your friends and relatives or neighbors or whatever what bank they should try.
Okay.
Because there's certainly banks out there that are trying real hard to book loans to help small businesses, to help their communities.
All right. One other subject I want to talk about, and we can kick it back and forth before we get into the viewer question. Low interest rates. Seems like there's extremely low interest rates all over the world, not just in the United States. Some people are still buying our 10-year bond, even though the yield as of today is below 2%, because the German 10-year bond is at like 0.5%. So it seems to me that there's something going on that's not good out there. These interest rates should be rising if the world economies are going to be picking up. How do you see that?
I would agree with you. There's something going on. I mean, if the government went deep into debt to finance our way out of the recession, there's a cost to repay that debt. You know, how, that hasn't appeared yet to any significance.
Well, I'm hoping that with the new Congress, historically, a Democrat in the White House and both houses being Republican has had the best stock market results historically over the last 80 years or so. And so maybe the fact that the Senate is favoring the Democrats 2 years from now, maybe the Republicans will get focused and try to work with the White House and get some things moving. But I think the Federal Reserve has done everything they can do, lowering rates, pushing all this money into the economy. They can't do anymore, and I think it's time for Washington to start to cooperate. And I heard a lot of that recently during the turnover of administrations. Even people in Washington, especially the new arrivals, are saying that they recognize that.
Well, there's also been, I mean, the administration has proposed to make it easier for first-time home buyers to get mortgages by lowering the amount of the down payment and providing other kinds of assistance. I mean, the home buying market in this country is one of the biggest industries there is, and one of the biggest indicators, most accurate indicators of a strong economy. So to get that ball rolling, I think it's a good thing to do.
Okay, Paul, thanks. Let's try to answer a viewer question. Sam Donaldson of Philadelphia says, when oil prices go up and down, how are the banks affected?
Yeah. Well, I mean, oil is just another huge element of our economy. I get the main answer would be it depends. But let me be a little more specific than that. It depends certainly on the bank. Is the bank involved in trading energy stocks? Is the bank involved in financing energy companies? Larger banks typically are doing that. Is a small business bank involved in that aspect to any great degree? Generally not. Are small businesses helped by lower energy prices? Generally, yes. Their electric bill is going to be less, their trucking bills are going to be less, their costs of materials that are petroleum-based are going to be less. So that is certainly helpful. But it depends on what aspect, what kind of bank it is, but they're involved in the energy business per se. But one other area where all banks will be affected is the impact on interest rates, as you had brought up earlier.
Sure.
If interest rates remain low, banks are going to find it difficult to make money.
Well, from a financial advisor's perspective, it seems that the fact that oil prices have gone down so much makes people fear that we're about to go into a recession. And so therefore they're buying government bonds even though they're taking a tremendous risk there and they're driving rates lower and lower. And the banks make their money based on that spread you talked about. It's nice to get 4% when you're only paying, 1/100%. But if rates start to go up to 4.5 or 5, the bank's profits improve.
Yes.
And I think the market thought that rates would start to go up, and just in the recent past, bank prices have dropped a little bit just because of this surprise on the rates. Okay, well, we hope that helps Sam Donaldson with that answer. If you have a question you want to send in, we're going to show you a quick tape on how to get your question in.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
Okay, the fun part of the show, Marisa, Pell, thank you so much for being here tonight. How you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Well, good. Well, just start out by taking a couple of minutes to tell us what you do.
I'm an intuitive business consultant, which means that I help CEOs, small, mid-sized businesses, mostly high-level management, to actually use their intuition to grow their business and affect the bottom line.
How does that CEO know he's going to have accurate intuition? Is that what you help him with?
Well, everybody has intuition. Everybody was born with it. It's just actually accessing it. And it's funny because a lot of people think that women's intuition is stronger, but I actually believe men's is. So that's kind of an interesting little aside, because I think men right away know, they get a gut feeling with decisions they're making, partnerships, hiring people, but sometimes they don't go with that.
I was going to ask that question, but you used the term first, the gut. So
yes.
Intuition is your gut feeling, trusting your gut.
Yes, trusting your gut and going off of, sometimes you get those subtle voices that come over you and say, you know, pay attention to these couple things, and then you kind of like push them aside, and then like 6 months later, you find out that some of those initial decisions that you were going to make were the right ones to begin with.
Well, don't a lot of CEOs say, well, I want to make my decision based on facts, and I don't want to
Yes.
just go with my gut? So what's your response when they say that?
It's not all on paper. That sometimes a lot of things are good on paper. That could be a business deal, that could be a contract, that could be you're looking at two different hiring prospects, and one has a much better, you know, lineage of where they went to school or where they've worked, and you say, oh, well, this guy looks better on paper, let's hire him, or he came from a good referral, but yet they feel better about the other guy, and some people kind of go with that initial fact sheet, and that could really affect their money.
Would you have a little story you could tell us about one of your clients, how it worked out?
Sure.
The different aspects of it, maybe in the course of, I don't know, a minute or two?
I can. It's funny because I tend to work with people who normally wouldn't believe in this stuff. They come to a point where they've tried everything in business to try to increase their bottom line, work a little bit less hard, and have fun. And so sometimes I work with a lot of lawyers and a lot of doctors who run their own business and manage their own people, and they can't seem to understand why they're putting more money into their advertising or marketing, they're hiring people, they're trying to get more clients, and they're still kind of in the rat race. So sometimes when I come and work with somebody, I usually look at their space first. Sometimes where they're located is a big money sucker. If I could use the term correctly.
Sure.
It's their space, it's where it's located, it's their surroundings, and sometimes that initial going there and seeing their space is a really good indicator of something that needs to be fixed almost immediately. So I worked with one attorney. This was a very big change. He tripled his income within 3 months.
Wow.
Okay. We changed his space first. He said he's hated his office for 10 years, but didn't ever think of moving it. But every time he went to work, he would get tired and fatigued. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of feng shui before.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So sometimes, and I have a team of people that I work with that I refer out, because obviously I can't do everything. So I'm kind of like a guidepost where I say, okay, here's what you need to do first. Let's go along this journey together, and I'll bring in the feng shui consultant, and she'll validate what I'm saying, and she'll validate a lot of what he was feeling too. So moving his office, just by tuning into his gut and finding the right office for him. I mean, the first time we went and looked for places, and I go along with them everywhere, he just stood in that space for about 10 minutes, and he said, I just feel like home. And this was such a big step moving forward for him, where he had everything. We had to get rid of filing cabinets. We had to get new decorating. We had to get new pictures, new sculptures, everything in his office that made him feel good. And that just started the ball rolling.
Well, that kind of a process doesn't happen where you walk in the door and suddenly you and the CEO are having a conversation where you're making a decision. For any viewers or listeners that are considering hiring you,
Yeah.
how long a process would this typically be? How long does it take for both of you to be comfortable with each other so that you can make a good decision?
Well, usually before I go and do a lot of the inside work, because I always say that we can work on the externals, but a lot of the person's problem is actually internal. There's a lot of self-doubt. Even with high-level executives or people that do make a lot of money, there's sometimes a lot of blocks that they're experiencing internally, either with, and I don't mean to be personal, but sometimes with family. They're having family issues, or sometimes with partners and other things that we kind of have to work out and work through. So usually I do an initial consultation to kind of get to know them a little better, but I like to see their space first because it tells me a lot about where I'm beginning.
Yeah. How did you get into this business?
I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I've been working for myself over 15 years, and I do a lot of work with intuition, but a lot of people have come to me that were other business owners, and I would try to help people with startups. A lot of people are like, I don't really know what I want to do, but they want to work for themselves. And I always tell people that it's okay to take risks, because a lot of people won't take risks and go into that direction because they're afraid of failing. So a lot of times, my success, even through a rough economy, has been following my intuition with business decisions I had to make. So I've done a lot of work on that end, and I do a lot of seminars and lecturing as well. I've taken my lectures to Princeton, East Stroudsburg University, many national corporations, and a lot of people know this stuff inside, they just don't apply it. So they just kind of need me to kind of remind them of what they already know.
I would imagine it's difficult to price the value of your company or your contribution to that
Yeah.
company. How do you and the CEO of the company come to an agreement on how you're going to measure your results and how you're going to get paid?
Well, I don't ever guarantee you're going to make a certain amount of income.
Right.
But because so much change happens within their personal life, within their business life, within their business contacts, their relationships, because they're an overall happier person, they're kind of affecting their bottom line internally and externally. So it almost always starts to really move forward. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable for people.
Well, some
too.
CEOs don't want to get psychic income. They want to get
Right.
dollars
Right.
in the cash register,
Right.
so to speak. So
Yeah.
do you have to make this agreement at the start that if I hit some level of performance or if you're unhappy with me at some point, we'll just stop? Or, I mean, how's that all work?
Well, I work off a retainer basis, so I
Okay.
charge, a certain amount an hour.
I see.
And we start to work together, and obviously if they don't, they consult me with overhauling their business, but they also consult me with business decisions too.
I see.
So they might say, okay, come and sit with me in this hiring process and consult with me about these people coming in. Or I'm thinking of merging, or I'm thinking of partnering with someone. What can you tell me about that? So that is valuable to them, that they're getting insight that they normally wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So that's a service that I provide that is of immediate value to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you find new clients?
It's all by word of mouth. I really didn't kind of go into this industry. I was kind of a media personality, and I just started working with friends or people that I knew and my clients who were just calling me for intuitive information, and it turned out that they needed a lot more help than that initial half hour or that hour. So I said, hey, this is what I do. I'll come in. I can't promise you anything, but people have been happy. So.
I think you do quite a bit of work in the media business. Do you want
Yes.
to talk about that a little bit?
The media or medium?
Well, the medium.
Medium.
Yeah.
Singular or
Okay.
plural?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
so I obviously have a business which I run from the back end, do all my administration and all my marketing and advertising, but I am out in the public eye as a professional medium as well. I kind of don't like talking about that in conjunction with my business consulting, because a lot of business people might be like, oh, that's a little too far out for me.
Uh-huh.
But yes, I do that. I do large shows of between like 300 and 500 people at large venues, theaters, and I do a lot of radio and television in that arena. So
Is that local here in the
all
Delaware
throughout
Valley?
the Mid-Atlantic, pretty
okay.
much New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, all
right.
along the East Coast.
So is that something that is a big part of your business, or is that sort of a side to what you do in the consultant work with CEOs?
That's pretty much how people know me in the public. The work that I do with CEOs is a little bit more private. I don't really advertise it
Okay.
along with my more public
Well, you
image.
just advertised
I
it
did.
here.
So it's kind of like I take the privacy of my clients very seriously and the way other people view their reputation. So people don't know when I'm coming into their business meetings what I really do. They just say I'm a consultant. So a lot of them do not tell their staff what it is that I do.
Okay.
So they bring me in and I just look like a normal business consultant.
Where do you see going with this in the next 5 or 10 years? More of the same? You going to hire people to help you, or?
You know what, I really love doing both aspects of my business, but what I found most gratifying for me is taking someone from start to finish and just completely transforming their life and them becoming happier in all aspects, not only with money, but also peace of mind, loving where they work, loving what they do, and having harmony all around. So but it takes me a while to do a complete overhaul with somebody, but I love working with businesses, structures, places that really need revival, that are kind of going on the downslope. So
I'll take the last couple of minutes to tell you one of my favorite stories about intuition. Admiral Nimitz was worried in World War II about where the Japanese were headed next, and he had a lot of intel people down in the basement telling him that they thought this attack was coming to Midway Island. And he said, well, my intuition is the same as yours, but I need some kind of proof. So the people in the intel community thought about it, and they sent a pilot to Midway Island. And why would you come out and suddenly panic about something that had to be solved quickly? The pilot was given a note by Nimitz, when you get to the CO, tell them to get on the HF radio and not in any kind of secret communication, just plain voice, screaming that you're out of drinking water, that it's been poisoned or something wrong and you urgently need drinking water. So then the message came through that Island Able, which was the island they thought was going to be attacked, needed drinking water. So now Nimitz had his hunch, but he also had the proof to back it up, you know.
Yeah.
And so I guess it goes back to Reagan's theory about trust but verify, you know, that
Yes.
type of thing. Do you have one
Yes.
last story you'd like to tell for a minute, or something that happened to you, or something that you've come through for someone on?
It's just over time, I think when people, use this a little bit, they learn not only how to develop their own intuition, because I don't want to make decisions for people.
Sure.
I want to advise them to learn how to do it themselves. So a lot of the things that I'm telling someone, they're saying, this is what my initial thought was. And it's actually giving them the confidence to tune into their gut feeling to make those decisions. I'm not really changing the way they perceive the world or perceive life. I'm just kind of validating what they feel inside. And once that skill is challenged, and once you work on that skill, it becomes automatic to where you're able to use it in your business decisions, and it will increase your bottom line, 100%.
Are most of your clients in the Delaware Valley? Do you travel around the country?
I do work with people all around the country, around the world. Sometimes I do phone consultations, Skype consultations, but all around the country, yeah.
And how many people do you work with in your firm?
I just have a secretarial staff, and it's just pretty much me. And
But you have some other people that can help you out, you mentioned earlier.
oh,
that-
yes, I have referrals that I refer out to, whether that's integrative medical physicians, shamans, feng shui experts, any type of business consultant, because I feel I can't really do everything, so I have to be able to, outsource. But those are people that own their own companies. They don't actually work for me.
Terrific. Well, Maria, we really appreciate, Marisa, we appreciate you being here tonight. And as far as I'm concerned, we usually talk about stocks and bonds and banks and loans and all that sort of thing. And it's fun
Yeah.
once in a while to have somebody that gives an interesting twist to what's going on, because there's more to the bottom line, and there's what's in the head of a CEO. And we appreciate you being here. Next week, our special guest, Bruce Lipnick, who's the chairman of Asset Alliance Group, and David Drake, who's the chairman of LDG Capital, and they're going to talk about group funding. As far as we're concerned, your money matters.